There's clearly some difference between creativity and intelligence. They're clearly not isomorphic. And this is obvious when you look at the genius phenomenon. This is a point Dean Keith Simonton makes in his really rather excellent 2018 book, The Genius Checklist. You can go through and see how many of these things you have in common with various geniuses. There's about 13 of them in total. He devotes a chapter to each. But in the book, he makes a good point. That IQ is very clearly merely a necessary. It's not in and of itself a sufficient factor by any stretch of the imagination for high levels of creative eminence. Indeed, Luis Alvarez and William Shockley, both of whom went on to win Nobel Prizes, which were two people who were denied admission into the Terman sample, which was a prospective longitudinal study attempting to get at genius genically. Ironically, the only two people who would legitimately qualify as geniuses by virtue of having won Nobel Prizes didn't make the cut. They both had IQs in the high 130s. So, it's clear that having very high IQ is obviously necessary, but there are tons of other things you have to have which combine to give rise to actual full-fledged genius, including probably some very rare personality and neurological quirks as well, which are very uncommon in the population. And probably deliberately so, because these people have to be rare if they're under strong group selection, because of negative frequency dependent advantages.
Sorry, can you just expand on what you mean by negative frequency dependent advantages?
So, that's when selection favours a population based on a rarity of a trait. So, in other words, having small numbers of a particular carrier of a particular genotype benefits the group. So geniuses are a really good example of this because having loads of them running around just pisses everybody off and makes them want to kill them. Hans Eysenck points out that geniuses are usually always persecuted in some form because people think they're arseholes. And most of them are. If you actually look at the history of them, they are like Newton. But the point is that the real advantage to having them around is having them around in small numbers, where they're not numerous enough to warrant being killed. They are, however, just common enough to be able to really benefit the group in some way through their innovation.